Welcome to my SRS build guide. This video shows you all the upgrades I have done to this Airsoft Sniper rifle. This guide doesn't have any cinematic camera angles or any of that jazz. This is purely just an informational video. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. So to start with, you will need your 5mm Allen key, and this is to undo the 4 bolts on the side here, plus the unlocking nut on the other side of the gun. So you will simply twist that round so that the little groove is pointing to the bottom of the gun, and then you just simply undo these 4. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard to get a nip on them, but don't fully undo them, just loosen them up and then try and pull the outer barrel out. If the outer barrel doesn't come out, try loosen these up a little bit more. So just like that. There comes the outer barrel, and I'll quickly take the suppressor off as well whilst we're here. And I'll put them to one side for now. So that's the outer barrel with the inner barrel and hop-up assembly come out of the gun already. And then to get the cylinder out and the piston, you want to simply push that little tab across until you feel it click, and then just push this down and it will just come right out. So there's my spring and spring guide, and there is the piston I'm using. So on this piston I'm using the variable mass piston from Silverback. I've got 2 aluminium weight sleeves and 2 steel ones, and I'm using the faceless mouse fart piston cup. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. All parts will have a link in the description. And then I'm using the Rapax RMS 2 jewel spring. It's slightly shorter than the blue light pull 2 jewel spring, but it's quite a bit stiffer. And I'm using one spring guide washer on there to bump the FPS up a tiny bit. And I've also got the Coke can mod, which is where you get a tiny bit of a Pepsi can, you wrap it around the spring guide and you slide the spring over. You can also do the same with thick silicone grease. If you just put a load of thick silicone grease on the spring guide and then just put the spring on it. The spring guide I am using is the spring guide from the WASP piston. Main reason I'm not using the WASP is because my WASP is currently broken. I don't know what happened, but it just completely fails to seal wear and the FPS goes all over the place. So I'm going to be getting some spare parts for that to get that back in the gun. But the WASP is not compatible with the hop chamber I'm using at the moment, so I'm not too sure what parts I'll use, but this is the build I'm using at the moment. So that's the spring, Coke can mod, washer, piston, and in the cylinder. I use WD-40 dry PTFE spray on the actual cylinder. So every now and again I'll take this out, remove this rubber seal here, pull this out and spray all around the outside of this cylinder with this stuff, just a thin coat, and that definitely makes the bolt pull a lot easier. So to put these back in, you want to pull the cylinder all the way back, and then what I like to do is get the front end of the piston in, and then it won't go in because the sear is up at the moment. So you have to pull the trigger and then it goes in. And then it's the same for putting in the spring. Line it up with the piston, pull the trigger and slide it just back in like that. And then click that forward, and that's not going anywhere. That's the back end of the gun done. So now we're going to take out the hop chamber. I'm actually going to replace the bucking whilst we're at this, because the bucking I'm using right now is the STALKER SR70 shore hardness bucking, or 70 degrees if you call it degrees, but I call it shore hardness because that's what it actually is. And I will be replacing it with a 60 because I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up, but I'm currently running on max hop to live 4/8, so I need to use a softer bucking. So what you're going to need is your 2mm Allen key, and just take out the two on the outer barrel. And put them somewhere safe. I know I'm just putting them on carpet, but I'll remember exactly where they are. This is where I always do my tagging, just on the floor. So once you've taken them two out, simply push it out. It's a bit stiff. And then once you've pushed it out a little bit, you can pull this hop. I don't know what you'd call this part, the outer hop assembly, I'm not too sure. But you just pull that and you just keep pulling until it all comes out. Usually, yep, one of your barrel spacers will get stuck in here and two will come out on the barrel. What you can do is when you go to push this back in, then normally you would end up pushing this one out of the end because the barrel will not be straight the whole way through, and then you can align the end of the barrel by just pushing that one in from that end. So what I'm going to do now is take these off, put them somewhere safe, and take that thing off. I don't know what you call it, but if you're working on a silverback, you will have one of them as well. So what we're going to do now is disassemble the hop unit. So I'm going to swap the 2mm Allen key out for a 1.5mm Allen key. And you'll also need a very small flathead screwdriver, and that's to take out the pin that holds the hop arm in. Just a tiny little screw right here. Mine's a little bit broken. It doesn't want to screw out, so I'm going to have to get it off the threads and then pull it. It's a bit of a bitch at the moment. There we go. Comes flying out. Tiny little screw, you don't want to lose that. And then you can take the lever off. I'm using the S2 arm, which is the quite square, concave nub. Nub. It's essentially what I guess you would call nubless, because you don't put a nub in there, because it's already got one built into the arm. I can't remember if it's the S1 or S3 arm. One of these does have a cutout, so you can put your own nubs in the STALKER Kraken hop chamber. So yeah, this is the Kraken hop chamber with the Morpheus inner barrel. You can buy these on Skirm Shop. I'll leave links in the description below. So you want to use your 1.5mm Allen key to loosen off all of these little tiny little screws. There's 5 grub screws on here, so not too many, but they can be quite easy to lose, especially the 3 towards the dial. They're very small. That one's just come out, so I'll put that one down there. So then I'll slide this off, and as you can see, I've done some PTFE tape on the bucking. That's just because it wasn't sealing. You can use silicone oil as well, but I just used PTFE tape. Found it a little bit easier. So that bucking just come out with the end of the hop chamber. So I'll quickly take this off. Right, so this is the STALKER SR hop bucking. This is the 70 shore hardness. So I'm going to be putting in the 60, which is the nice purple one, the one that normally comes with all of their hop units and upgrades and stuff like that. On Skirm Shop, they do say that this is for the TAC 41, but it works in the SRS as well because it's got the double fins and stuff like that. This isn't actually a brand new bucking. This is one I used a long time ago. So I'm putting it back in because, like I said, the 70 I have to run it on max hop, so the 60 I should be able to get away with running it on about half the amount of hop from the chamber. So inside there's a little tiny, it's kind of hard to see, but along this edge here there's a little kind of like bit sticking out, which goes in this groove here on the back end of the inner barrel. So what you want to do is line them up. And you'll know when you've lined it up properly because you won't be able to wiggle it. And these fins will be in line, like directly in the center of these cutouts. Another way to check it is if you find where the actual window is of the inner barrel, look through it. It'd be a bit hard to get it on camera, but if you look through it and press down, you'll be able to see the contact coming down in the barrel. So the next thing you want to do is grab the back end of your hop chamber again. Make sure the BB feeding entry, whatever you call that, is the opposite side of the inner barrel to the contact, because you want where the contact is, where your nub applies pressure through the hole in the inner barrel on the bucking, you want that to be on the top side of the hop chamber. And then you just, oh, I actually forgot to mention something. One thing you can do to test air seal is if you plug the end with your finger quite hard and then just blow through here. That has actually got perfect air seal. Sometimes you can get air leaking out of the top, like around this rim. That's what was happening with this one. That's why I had the PTFE tape on it. But this one is actually working pretty well, so I don't need to do that. So just put this back on. The thing I like about the STALKER one is you cannot misalign it with the fast hop. I always spend ages fucking twisting this bit because it's a tiny bit out. Then I have to reassemble the hop chamber, turn the hop up on max, see how the contact's looking through the thing, and it's always out ever so slightly. It's just a pain in the backside to get working, I think. But obviously once the fast hop is assembled properly, then it is a really good hop chamber for £35. So then you want to slide this bit back up like that, and what I like to do is kind of grip it like a syringe, just to make sure it's all pulled tight together as you do in these screws, and just do them until you feel them kind of nip tight. You don't need to over tighten these because they will dig into the inner barrel itself. And for those of you who are wondering what FPS I run on this, I don't really go by FPS, I go by joules. I aim for about 2.25 joules. I don't want to be chasing the FPS limit for that one odd reason where I go to a new site, their chrono is slightly different and it says I'm running too hot, or that sort of thing. So I always try to chrono a little bit under. Right, so now we have to put the hop arm back in, and what I like to do is align this up properly, because this is what it says on the manual for the hop chamber. With this line here is meant to line up with the number 6, which equates it to anywhere between 0 and 1. So when you put in the arm, it's not applying a stupid amount of hop automatically. So you just push this in like so, and then you need to put this little tiny pin back in, and this always gives me grief, this does. I don't know why. Sometimes I spend about 10 minutes trying to put this bloody thing in. There we go, so that's in. What was actually wrong with it was the hop arm was actually pushed a tiny bit too much that way, so I just had to quickly pry it out a tiny bit, and then that went straight through. So what you want to do is just tighten this up. Doesn't need a lot, like maybe 1 or 2 turns, and then that's that done. And you can check the hop. It should be perfectly aligned, so I always just put it to max hop, which is 7, and then just have a look through, and yep, it's perfectly aligned. So now we put this back in the outer barrel. So you want to grab your outer hop assembly thing, whatever it's called. Slide this back on. This is a little bit stiff for me. There we go. Just needed a little bit of extra force. Right, so then we put on our barrel spacers. And I'd like to try and spread these out evenly across the inner barrel. So there'll be one there, and one there. These tend to just move as I put these in, but it's mainly as long as the one at the end is centering the barrel, then you're normally good to go. So what you want to do is try and line up the bottom of the hop chamber, which is up here, with this cutout in the outer barrel. Sometimes these have to go in a little bit, otherwise the inner barrel just slips through them. And then, so you look through here and through there and just basically try and make sure everything's all lined up, which it is. So I've done this a million times. And then what I like to do is thread these by hand initially, and then get your 2mm Allen key and tighten these up. Once again, do not massively over tighten them, just until it nips. Like so. You don't want to over tighten them, just do it until it nips again, and then make sure you can adjust the hop easily. Sometimes they're a bit stiff if the dial's a bit too far into the outer barrel. So the last thing you want to do is get your barrel spacer and just push it in here, like so. Just like that. Done. So, putting this back into the rifle, what I like to do is push the bolt all the way back, slide this down like so over the feeding tube, push this forward, lock it down, then you get your 5mm Allen key, put the locking nut all the way around so that ain't going to move anywhere, and then tighten it up from right to left, and then when you undo it, left to right, and you just tighten it up until they're a bit tight. You don't want to overkill it. And then last but not least, one thing I like to always check is the air seal. So you cock the gun, make sure it's not loaded. That's why I just shot it first. I knew it wasn't loaded because I just assembled it, but it's always best just to be 100% sure. Once you shot the gun, you recock it, put your finger over the end of the inner barrel, and then pull the trigger. And then if you can hear any air coming out of it, then there's a leak somewhere. Or if you can't feel it, I can feel it on my finger. Whereas if I let go of this, it just made a little pop noise. We do it again. There we go. The camera should be picking up the sound of air coming out when I release my finger. Like so. And then, last but not least for me, silencer. You don't have to put a silencer on it, it's just, if you want to get rid of that muzzle signature, then I would highly recommend getting a very good suppressor for it. One where the foam baffles are all different shapes and sizes. So, that is my SRS build. Thank you very much for watching.